Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole. I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. And this podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach. And it's all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I am your host, and I have a special guest today that I will be introducing in just a moment. But before I do, I would love to ask you to do me a solid. Leave a comment on this episode and like, subscribe, and share. I have amazing guests, and today I have another one for you. But the thing is that I do this so that I can get their stories out. And the only way that I can do that is with your help. So remember, comment, like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. So this beautiful lady right here is Teresa Menting, and we don't really know each other. I just know little tidbits, but we met because I was invited to be in this podcast palooza at the Live Your Yes Life. And so she has amazing stories and wanted to be on the podcast. And since that's what I love is amazing stories, here she is. And I am going to let her introduce herself, but I will say I'm fascinated to learn a little bit more because we were talking for just a minute before we got started. And she has a nonprofit for women. And it just sounds so amazing that I said, don't tell me too much. Let's wait till we get on the podcast because I want to discover right along with you guys because that's what I love to do. And that way, when I'm in awe, it's all genuine because I'm learning about her at the same way that you guys are. So I'll be asking questions and I will be honest, Teresa, sometimes I interrupt.
That's okay.
Because like I told you, I love to feel like we're just sitting in the living room and we're having a cup of tea or a glass of wine and we're just getting to know each other. And so we're just going to be doing it on this platform. And so are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, beautiful. So go ahead and tell just a little bit about you and then we'll dive right in.
Sure. So about me, I am a mom of three. I have a little baby girl that we just had. So she just turned 6 months old. I live in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and uh, I have, I have so many wonderful passions, and I guess that kind of leads me to where I am now. I owned a voice studio. I went to school in New York City. I had an event company. I still have the event company. Um, but I really went with the flow of what needed to happen in my life. And I never in my wildest dreams would have ever thought that this is where the universe would bring me. And it's really the most beautiful thing is just following all the signs and doing exactly what I was put here to do.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love it when, you know, so much of our lives, we tend to kind of resist those calls for something. It's like, that feels outside of my comfort zone. I'm not
Yeah,
so sure I can do that. That's not what I'm trained for. And I love that you were able to answer that call, even when it's like, I don't know about this.
yeah, exactly. So backing up, my mom was diagnosed with cancer in um 2016. And so when that happened, my life just kind of paused, right?
Hmm.
And being a business owner, I realized I couldn't just stop and be with her at any moment. And that was really, really, really hard on me. When we were in the hospital, we started watching every type of documentary and every type of TV show pretty much. And this documentary called Alive Inside came on, and it was about how music can restart your memory for individuals with dementia and Alzheimer's. And I said to my mom, "Oh my gosh, I have to do that. I have to do that." And she's like, "You don't need another gosh dang thing on your plate." Are you serious? And I don't know
Spoken
what,
like a true mom.
right, like a true mom. So I don't know what your beliefs are, but let me tell you, a month later, I was just about to bring back all my students and all of my clients, and this job posts for Fond du Lac County for someone to create the first ever in-home music and memory program for the entire state of Wisconsin.
Oh,
And so, of course, I had to take that job. And when you do a good job in the government, they reward you with more jobs. So
wow.
I then was asked to be their volunteer coordinator at the Department of Social Services. So when I
Okay.
took that job, I said, I will do it as long as I can interview all of your past volunteers because I see this filing cabinet filled with volunteers and I only see like 4 active. And I want to know, where are we missing here? What's going on? So when I was interviewing, a lot of the mentors just felt like um, there were no boundaries set in place. They weren't given the tools and the resources. It's kind of like blind dating, and then they're sent on their way.
Yeah.
Um,
So when you say there weren't any boundaries in place, was it boundaries with them and the people they were volunteering with, or
yeah.
the people that they were working with? What?
So my role was several different things, but we had volunteers with transportation for supervised visits. We had people that did supervised visits and pop-ins, the friendly visitors, juvenile jail library, all the interns. But then they also had a mentor program. And so what they would do is introduce a woman to a mentor at maybe a coffee shop, and then they'd be kind of led on their way.
Hmm.
And it really wasn't set. It was the intention was good, but it wasn't something that was being overseen or something that was really setting it up for success on both ends for to protect the mentor, but also to create a relationship where someone isn't thinking that the other person's above them.
Hmm.
Mentee relationship, it really you need to walk hand in hand
Right.
and not feel intimidated by your mentor or as if you're going to upset them if something comes out about your past. So I just went to the head and I said, I think we need to shut this down. We need to do something else. And she goes, what do you think we do? And I go, well, I think maybe like a women's empowerment series. She goes, I love it. Let's do it. What is it? I go, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. So she said, "Well, here's the deal. We want you to do this, and I think you need to have a planning day and just invite people to see if they're interested." So we invited some of the past volunteers, professionals in the community, women who were struggling. I mean, every walk of life, and we had 43 volunteers that showed up to this planning meeting. We just had sticky notes around the whole county basement and just started going through all different topics and what kind of things are struggles and how do we get over it and not just over it but how do you work through it and how do you find who you are in the way. And on top of that you have a lot of women who feel very lonely, that don't have a support system, or they may have a support system but the support system doesn't understand the experience or the trauma that they're currently facing. So they still feel very isolated and alone. So it's really making sure to create a sense of community, a sense of sisterhood, belonging, acceptance, and vulnerability. A place that's safe, a place that women learn different topics and self-discovery while they're with their mentors to kind of open those doors. So that's really where it all started was this idea of not knowing and then creating this program, and it wasn't always easy. The county did not fund the program, so it was yes, you can do it, but you have to find sponsors or get donations. So everything from a fork to every meal we feed every single person, to t-shirts to paper, anything we had to find.
Wow.
Um, so it was a journey, but after 2 years there, uh, we sat down and had a conversation of, this program is not going to serve at the capacity that it's meant to serve if it's stuck here. We need to serve in a year-round capacity. We need to bring women together in a much bigger scope. Can we move this out? And they gave us their blessing. So we're now in series 7. We've
Hmm.
rebranded now, and our name is We Empower Her. Um, the Women's Empowerment series name is still with the 12-week program that we have. But we have several programs, several different facets to what we do for Women's Empowerment series and We Empower. So it's just grown and evolved throughout the years.
Ah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I just love how you let your intuition guide you, and you just went for, that's not working, let's do this, and you went for it. I love that. That's impressive, very impressive. And the fact that you were able to um do this while you were pregnant, obviously, because you've got a new baby, and you were able to just get everybody on board and just take control. I'm so in awe of all of that, because that is amazing. Because just a little stumbling block would have put most people, like, this is too hard. Obviously this isn't something I'm supposed to be doing. So it says a
Well,
lot
and
about your dedication.
thank you. Actually, there were 2 babies. So the
Oh,
first series, I was pregnant,
uh-huh.
and my little Leo's gonna be 7.
Oh, wow.
And then I just had a baby this last fall. So 2 of my babies were born during this program. Um, but through that, actually, last week, I spoke at our series for the first time as like the speaker.
Okay.
And we have a program director, and she asked me to speak on overcoming. And through all of this, what no one really knew was the struggles that I was facing on my own. And
Hmm.
the series was this safe place for me through a very uh, difficult marriage with a husband who was addicted to medication and alcohol. Um, and it was years and years and years of a lot of anguish. And this last year, actually a year ago, while I was 6 weeks pregnant, my husband left me. And I shared that story for the first time last week at the series. And I bring it up and I talk about it because it is so important when you are a mentor, when you are helping someone who's going through something or just struggling, there's no timeline at when someone can leave. There's no timeline there. You can't rush someone um, to take those next steps. And I
Right.
think any sort of mentor program or any sort of anything in life, any sort of relationship, you can, I'm sure everybody has said this to themselves. Well, I've helped them over and over again. I don't know why they're not taking these steps, or I don't know why they're not moving ahead in their lives. I don't understand why there's only so much I can do. And when it comes to domestic relationships, or when it comes to helping someone with an addiction and um, being in those places, there's so many things that have to be in place mentally, spiritually, financially, um, physically, for you to be able to take those steps. So, um, but those tools and those seeds that are planted are always there.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing that I shared with our women last week, because I wanted them to know that it doesn't matter who you are or what role you are in life. Every single person can struggle. Every
Yeah.
single person, it doesn't matter if you don't have a pot to piss in or if you're the CEO of a company, domestic violence, mental health, addiction, trauma, sexual abuse, none of that discriminates.
Right.
And
Definitely.
so we have to um, make these conversations more public so that people can find a safe space and can find a way to talk about them in a healthy way. So, um, it is important. It's important for sharing stories. It's important to gather people about like how did you inspire someone to get out of that situation. Um, Little did I know, I was the last series, I was just a mess. I was behind the scenes because I was couldn't even get out of bed. I was crying all the time, pregnant and hormonal and emotional. Um, but little did I know the women, they still looked up to me. They didn't know all that was going on, and they still found so much strength in what I did. And I I say this wholeheartedly, I never gave up. When it
Yeah.
was really, really, really tough, um, in my personal life, I never gave up on the series, and I think that so often we live a life with excuses or when something's hard, I'm not gonna do this anymore, we'll just put it away for later.
Yeah.
Those are sometimes the moments that you need to put your energy into that the most, and it's when some of your best work comes because it's so raw and authentic.
Yeah. Well, if I can share, I feel you about the being splitting up when you're pregnant.
Mhm,
Actually, my first child, I was 8 months pregnant when my husband left me.
mhm,
He was having an affair and I didn't know it. And I don't want to get into the whole thing,
mhm.
but I thought he was a lot older than I was. And I thought the sun rose and set at his feet. I thought he was amazing. He was a musician, and I altered my life for him. And when that happened, I didn't even know it, but our house was about to be foreclosed on. There was all these things. So then I go into the hospital to have this baby. And well, let me back up. Um, my When I went to the pediatrician after we split up, and I was a basket case because, like you said, you're emotional. All of a sudden, I'm at that 8 months. And I'm just crying in the doctor's office. And the doctor turned around and looked at me and he patted me on the hand and he said, "No, listen, Vicky." He said, sometimes God steps in and he takes somebody out of your life that would not be good for you. And he said, obviously, if he'll leave a woman when she's 8 months pregnant, he's not the right guy for you.
Yeah,
And just because he used his sperm doesn't mean he's a daddy. And
yep,
so you're probably both better off. And that was such a weird thing for this doctor. Wasn't that personable,
mhm,
for him to share. And I will say I had a really tough time. I ended up having to move in with my father and my stepmother and my brother and live with them as when the baby came. I was able to stay in my house until I went into the hospital. And when I came out of the hospital, I had to go live with them because the house was being foreclosed on. And it was just such an emotional time that it's like you feel like, or I felt like, how in the hell could this have happened to me? You know?
yeah,
And it was just very devastating. But I can say, looking back at that, and that's been many years ago, because my son is in his late 30s now. And but when I look back, it was the best gift that man could have ever given me was to
yes,
walk out of my life and not keep me in that space that I was in. And, but that didn't come, that idea, that epiphany didn't come for a while, you
yes.
know? Yeah.
Well, and it's so remarkable too, because when you said that the doctor said that to you, at that moment, because my doctor was my OB was talking to me, and I just remember her talking to me and giving me some advice and suggestions, and I don't think I actually fully processed or listened to what she said until now when I reflect back on it.
Hmm.
And it was just so sincere and so heartfelt, but at the time, it was just like just words.
Right.
And I remember every OB appointment, I go in there and she'd just look at me and I would just cry. I would just cry. And I will say, like you said, it was the best thing that ever happened to you. Best thing that ever happened to me was 2 weeks after he said he wanted to divorce me, I caught him with another woman, and that was the whole reason, the affair the whole time. And that was actually the best thing that I could have seen,
Mhm.
because I was unknowingly enabling him when really I thought, "He's the only person I cannot help, and I'm a fixer. I'm a fixer, and I
Yeah.
wanted to help him." And I
Mhm.
could not figure it out. I couldn't He had a rough upbringing, like, I didn't I just constantly was making excuses in my mind for his really poor behavior, and so the day that I saw him with her was the day that I never, ever, ever would allow him to ever talk to me like that ever again. And this last summer, he even called me up and, "I just really miss you," all of those things. But then to realize how much I gained and how strong I was, even in the sadness, because I needed that. I was done. My life was starting to take shape. My my kids, I worked so hard on therapy with my kids. They go to therapy every week. My myself, I highly believe in therapy, and just processing through so much personal growth and development is just a huge thing. Um, but being able to serve and help other women, and
Mhm.
I had to fully pause, take a step back, and at the moment, I felt so selfish because I was so used to serving,
Yeah.
and I went off the grid, and I just 100% focused on me and my
Beautiful.
and it was the best thing I ever did for myself. The best thing. And I look back and I wish him well. I pray because he's, my 3 children's father, and I pray that he will will get sober and have a beautiful life. I wish him well. Um, but I also subconsciously kind of thank him because I I have a really great life right now.
Yeah.
And and to be in a relationship now, was not expecting to be in a relationship. I said I'd date in 5 years. That did not happen. Um, and it would both neither of us were looking for a relationship. And months later, I met someone who has treated my children and myself with so much love and respect, where I find myself not feeling deserving at times. I'm like, I have to go back. I'm like, why am I reacting like that?
Yes.
Um, one night we were, you know, when the little ones have boogies in their nose and you got to suck them all out. He was doing that to the baby, and I'm holding her little bottom, her little legs. And he said, "Are you going to help me?" And I thought he was talking to me. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just holding her legs." And he paused and he looked up and he goes, "That is so sad that you thought I was talking to you like that." He was talking to Elsie because she put her little hand on his hand, and he goes, "Are you gonna
Uh,
help me?" And he just said how it's just sad how that's how I was so used to being talked to. So it's, the stories of inspiration of, now I deserve to be talked to better. I am worthy. And making sure that I share that with the women, and let people know, do not belittle yourself or do not lessen yourself for anything. Um,
yeah. Yeah, that's a great lesson for everybody because, no matter who you are, like you said, we all have our own little challenges. And most of the time, people see your polished, exterior, the way you're showing up and how you're presenting yourself, but they don't have a clue what's going on underneath, you know? And that's why it's so important. Like when you go out and about and you're meeting people, you know, wherever you are, and maybe they're a little snippy, but you don't know what they just dealt with, who they've just lost, or, you know, what somebody has just said to them. And so it's like taking that moment to take a pause then and say, wait a minute, you know, I don't know who they are. So just give them a smile and keep going. Don't
Yeah.
react, and just let them process however they're processing. And sometimes it's really hard because some of those people are really rough, you know,
Yeah.
but it's recognizing that everybody's different for one thing, and we don't know what somebody else is going through. And that's why this is beautiful, because you shared with your women and let them see that, you know, maybe I was doing the best I could, and maybe I got snippy with somebody. I don't know if you did or not, but you know, we can be tired and do that, much less going through all of that mental stuff. And it's like, now I can show up even better because I've shared this with you. I'm not in that place anymore. I'm on the other side. And because I'm on the other side, you can recognize that you may be in the middle of the dark tunnel right now, but there is another side and you'll get there, you know? So it's great inspiration for you to be sharing with those women. So I just wanted to ask, I know you said you work with all women, but primarily is it more, maybe women that have been, you know, abandoned, or maybe maybe they're in the DFAC system, or I don't even know if you call it DFACs where you're at. So maybe it's some of these women who kind of seem to slip under the rug as far as people being able to help them. And and because, you know, uh I had an issue where I was actually raising a baby that I thought was my granddaughter, but actually once the paternity test and everything were done, because it was my son, she was not my grandchild. But I was raising her from the time she was out of the hospital, because the DFAC stepped in and took her away from the mom.
Okay.
And so I'm raising her, and I will say that I really, really tried hard um to have the mom do all the things and, you know, be part of it and everything. But she was struggling with so much stuff, from addiction to not being good enough to having family that was, you know, it was a lot. And
Mhm.
so she kept falling short on it, where she didn't show up, she didn't do these. And so there was a lot of things. And but I'm wondering, you know, as you're describing some of this, you know, what would some system like that have done to help her? Now, she did end up getting custody, even though DFACS and the CASA worker said, no, don't do it. The judge did give her custody, but she ended up giving her away. Um, where, you know, I wanted to adopt her.
Oh,
Sorry,
oh no.
but she was 3, a little over 3 when she got her full time. And she will be 10 in June. And I haven't seen her since before her 5th birthday. And I only got to see her a couple of times from the 3 to the 5. Um, but I mean, that's neither here nor there. But I wonder, really, maybe she would have made totally different choices, you know, had she had something like that. Because she's had another baby since then. I don't think she has that baby either. And so it was like this pattern. She had 2 children before, you know, so there's so much.
Cycle, breaking the cycle.
Yeah, there
What
is
you have
just,
to work on.
yeah. And so that's what feels so strong to me about what you're doing, is
Yeah.
you're helping them to um to find the strength inside to realize that they are a viable, amazing human being, even if they've made horrible choices. And they can, with the community and with all the help, they can actually get that assistance to change that whole thing.
So let
Am I
me
understanding it correctly?
yes, absolutely, and,
Okay.
let me tell you, my heart aches for you on all of that. Um, and after this, I will definitely would love to talk more about it too, because there's some different suggestions I do have, for you. But I will say, when someone is not showing up and they're making these repetitive mistakes and behaviors, we see them as someone that's failing, they just don't care, they're using, they're blah, blah, blah. So everybody's trying to fix this, right? They're trying to fix the
Mhm.
using, the not showing up, the no commitment, all of this. But there's underlying things that are why those things are happening, right? So many times services they focus on, okay, let's get her in for addiction. Let's get her in for let's try to get her family services. Let's try to you're not you could teach her parenting left and right and it is going to go in one ear and out the other. If she has dealt with childhood trauma, sexual abuse, any sort of thing that has just um her upbringing. We don't know how someone was raised. We have women who were chained or sex trafficked or, that they don't know anything different. And so like there's this avoidance of facing that. And so now everything is being focused on what currently is the issue. Well,
Right.
we can't address what currently is the issue if we're not addressing what was the past issue.
Right.
And so when we serve, like you asked what kind of women, yes, we serve all, but I will say it's really crazy how whenever we have women come in, there's like these cycles of demographics that
Mhm.
come. So when we were in the county, a lot more of the women that came in were, what did you call that, defect?
Mhm. Department of Family and Children Services.
Okay, so ours is the Department of Social Services
Okay.
or DCP, Child Protective Services. So that program, when we were in the county, our many of the women that we served were women that have lost their children or were working on getting their children back or had voluntary services through the county. When we moved out of the county, we had women from all over coming. And so we have women that are 18 years old that are coming in that are just like really struggling with finding their identity with like a bad home life and they want so badly to find a connection to other women to build themselves up. We have women who are 60, 70 years old that come in and just are really struggling with um, finding their purpose or their identity. We have women who have struggled with addiction or mental health. A big thing is domestic violence is always
Mhm.
a one. Women trying to rebuild their lives after that. Um, but it's really an interesting thing when you take all of these pieces or you see something like you experienced, it's breaking that cycle. So the repetitive behavior can keep going on until we can break that cycle. And so that's why we don't just work with the women, we work with their children too with mirrored classes because we want the moms and the children to be able to both work on their journey because the child secondhand has gone through that trauma,
Right.
right? So they may not know all of the details, but there are things that they have had effects on because of the mom. And so women will apply for the series in all walks of life. They may not be ready to take ownership for the 12-week mentor program. That might not be the right place for them. Maybe they aren't showing up for themselves. So we have other classes that might be better for them that are going to help guide them and inspire them and encourage them to take those steps first before they're in the 12-week series. You want to make sure someone that's in the 12-week mentor program working with a mentor is ready for those next steps. But we have a blossoming sisterhood program. We have our enrichment classes. We have sisterhood support classes. We have a volunteer work program that focuses on integrating the women into volunteering and into different community stuff, but then they also earn points that they redeem for Christmas gifts and birthday gifts and household items. So we really thrive on being a hand up and not a
Hmm.
handout.
Right.
So,
I love
and then
that.
we have our empowerment exchange, which we have speakers from all over. Um, and that is broadcasted live on our Facebook. This will be our 5th year doing that. Um, and we have Wisconsin Her Day. So we partnered with the Milwaukee Bucks basketball team, NBA basketball team, their sister team, and we created the Wisconsin Her Day. So we have speakers from all over Wisconsin. We had 12 speakers this year. We had breakout sessions right at the arena, women in business, family and relationships, self discovery, and um, productivity. And so women pick which groups they want. Everything is free. At night, the players change their jerseys with women's faces on it, and then they auction them off for our programs. And then our graduates graduate on the court. So we really are growing, serving all women in all different walks of life, whether it's women in business, women with women that are stuck and need more one-on-one mentoring to just enrichment classes, or women that first need those first steps of knowing where to even start in their lives. So it's really that transition um, to work with someone, and they really kind of pick their story. What is their story, and where do we fall in that story, and how can we serve them? It's going to be determined by what they want to put into it, and how they want our involvement. Um, but it's just such a beautiful thing to see when you go into the community and you see women and their kids and another woman and their kids on a play date, or seeing a mentor and a group of the women going to the farmers market, and um, just all these relationships that are being fostered. It's just extremely beautiful and special. But the women that are stuck, that are in those repetitive cycles, the biggest thing I can tell them is, I know it's hard when someone gives you a name or a phone number, or to take that step. It seems so overwhelming. And I'm sure their CPS or CASA workers so often have handed them a card and said, call this place and they're going to help you. It is so overwhelming just to walk in the door of a place when
Hmm.
97% of our women struggle with mental health and anxiety. My suggestion is find someone that can do the call with you, and just make a time in a day to do it. It's the doing it that's the hardest part.
Right.
Once it's done, you will feel so
Yeah. It's
accomplished.
like, ah,
Yes, it's like the biggest weight off your shoulders, and
yeah.
you're gonna think about it, obsess about it all the time, and somebody will bring it up, and then it's a touchy subject, and nobody wants to upset you. Um, but it is the best feeling when you finally took that step. And we even talk about domestic relationships, why people say, "Why didn't she just leave? Why aren't you just leaving?" It's easier to stay in that unknown, or to stay in the space you're at where you know
Hmm.
that you can handle it because you've handled it, right?
Right.
Than it is to jump through the fiery hoop of unknown to the other side, and you don't know what's on that other side.
Yeah.
And
The phrase that I used to hear when of course, I was raised in the South, so it may not be something that you've heard. I don't know. But I used to hear that old phrase, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know.
ooh, that's good.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was a big implication, like you might think you're miserable right now, but you might get over there and wish you were back. And
Yes,
so that was like, don't go, don't go.
yes.
And I heard that it's a big phrase, I hear it all the time still. I'll hear people say that.
Yeah, that is a very, I'm gonna have to use that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. You can say you got it from the South.
Yeah, I got it from the South. I got it from the South.
Yes. So you're in Wisconsin, right? So this program and this stuff that you do, is it just in Wisconsin? I know you said you have a Facebook group that's live, and so I'm assuming that's a lot of people that aren't in Wisconsin. So is this stuff opened up for people that might only be able to do it virtually, or is
Yeah.
it all in person?
So we have our program, our Empowerment Exchange, through our Facebook page that does go live. And we had people from 3 different countries
Oh,
as
beautiful.
well. So we have a huge reach on our Empowerment Exchange. Um, and then our program, we've been constantly being asked, when can we create a hub, or can we duplicate this in this city or this city or this city? So right now we're working on our creating our programming where other communities can actually, we would facilitate and help give the entire marketing materials and all of that stuff to
So you would
help
kind
other.
of like you would train them of how this works.
Yep. Because it's very important to understand the heart that is in it, and to
Hmm.
understand, we've done it for so long. We know we've trial and errored so many different things. And we would actually have part of the class zoomed in, or televised in. And then we'd have like pick your next steps. And these are the second half of class community resources you can reach out to, um, activities that we do. This is a free activity. This one would be an activity you need a little bit of money for, etc. So we're working on that right now, to help other area nonprofits, or any nonprofit in any community. After our first Empowerment Exchange launched, and went worldwide, we had people from all over. I have a woman, and she's one of my clients, and we need help with this. Can you take her on? And I'm like, we're just in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin here, okay? Um, but we've really, I mean, we have mentors driving from 2, 3 hours away every week just to mentor in our program, because it's just such a huge reach, and we have such a huge success with what we do.
Oh, I am so excited that you were here today,
Yeah.
because that is, it's like a breath of fresh air. Not that everything, all the guests that I've had haven't been a breath of fresh air of some kind, but um, it gives you hope. Because I will say, because like my reference is to the defect stuff that I went through, right? And I can say at one point I was going to be a foster parent after all this went south and I didn't have her anymore. I really wanted to do it, but I just didn't do it. Part of it was the training that you had to go through and watching the videos and seeing the things that happen to children and the reasons why they're taken away. It was so mind-boggling to realize how many kids were in the system, and that I just felt like so tiny and so insignificant that I just couldn't seem to do it. And sometimes I regret that because, I know I would have been able to help to some degree, but I was so heartbroken with this losing because she still felt like my granddaughter, whether she was blood or not. And all I could really think of is you bring this child into your home and, you do all this to help them, and then they put them right back into the same place and there's nothing different. And so
Yeah.
that was what was so heart-wrenching, right? But this thing, it just feels like that is the perfect thing so that you can feel confident that you take this child in and you help them to move through and do all this stuff with their parents. And when they get connected, that there's some glue there,
Yeah.
there's something that holds them together so that there's not this, back and forth, back and forth. And I know that's a big thing, that
Yes.
happens. I know here it
Yeah.
is. They go
It
in the
is.
system, they come out. They go in,
Because
they
the
come out.
goal is always reunification.
Yeah.
That's the goal, is to always reunify. And so on the outside looking in, it's so gut wrenching when you're like, how this woman is not set up for this yet, but it's always a reunification. So how can we, if that's the goal, how can we help both mom and child?
Right.
Be- How do you also help a mom who right now is in fight or flight in their mind? So they are not able, like, they can work so hard and cross these things off that the judge says, do this, and they do them, but they're still not able to be a present parent. They're
Right.
struggling even communicating with their child because they aren't present with themselves.
Right.
Like, I remember when I was going through everything and my emotions, I just kept saying to one of my friends, I feel like I'm not a present parent. I sit down and I cannot engage with my kids right now because I was just crying. And it was so upset. Then I would get so upset with myself. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a season. That was a short season.
Right.
But you have women that's
That's
not
their life.
their lives. And
Yeah.
so I know how hard that was. But I also see on the flip side, working with women, you have women who don't know how to communicate with their kids because it's just they can't. But then you have on the other side women who don't have anyone else, so their children are like their therapists. And then these children are carrying all this really heavy stuff that a
Mm-hmm.
child should not have to know or carry. And so that's a really big important piece with our program is, you know, when kids are done with class and moms are done with class, here's some appropriate things that you can talk about with your kids, and conversation starters so that everybody is feeling like heard, validated, and this is a healthy way to communicate about, if you learned about domestic violence tonight, you're not going to go home and tell your kid, yeah, I told you, blah, blah, blah. Well, your kid's learning about healthy relationships. You can just reinforce, like, here's some conversation starters for you to talk about that. And what not to talk about, because we don't need to share all those nitty gritties. They're just kids. So,
Right.
I think that that's a big part of it is you're working with the moms, but you got to work with the kids.
Yeah, yeah. It's beautiful. I just love everything that you're talking about because, like I said, things I can't say for certain because you just don't know, but things could have been very different, with the way things that happened. And like and I've known other people that have dealt with, being they were foster parents for a bit and that kind of thing. And it was like um if there was something like this locally that was put in place, then it would, like you said, break the cycle, stop the noise of all the things that they've been in their life. And I'm a hypnotist as well, and so as a hypnotist, I help people all the time because it's like you can only do so much with your brain here because your conscious mind is only 12% of what you're doing all the time. The rest of it's
Right.
happening back here. The rest of it's your subconscious beliefs and patterns and things that have happened to you. And until you can make a change in all of that, you're just fighting that brick wall.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's creating a space where they're allowed to um see the stuff and figure out with your help to get out of it and do something different. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just opening up conversations that people don't talk about.
Right.
Like,
Right.
we even have a week on grieving and bereavement, and we have a whole bereavement ponds that we bring in, and the women write a letter on the back of these beautiful lotus flowers that they float in the ponds, to a loved one that they've lost, or maybe it's to a former self that they've lost. And so, a
I
lot of
love that.
yeah, a lot of people don't realize how much they've not grieved. They hold on to wanting to be who they were
Hmm.
instead of grieving that loss and inviting in the future self, because your future self is way stronger than where you were in the past. And
Right.
so we have to celebrate who we're becoming instead of always wanting to go backwards. I mean, yeah, I'd like to fit in my size 8 pants right now, but let's be real. This mama didn't get there yet, okay? And it's okay if I don't. I'm gonna celebrate the beautiful little babies that I got.
Yeah.
All those little marks that she put on my belly.
Yep, yep, yep. Well, at one point I had a program that I was working with people, and it was called Body Beautiful, because what a lot of people were doing, even people that are skinny and fitting into the size 2 jeans or whatever, they still see their flaws in their body, even more so maybe than some people that are a lot heavier, and so it's like, where did we get to this place where we're constantly, condemning ourselves for what we have here, this
Yeah,
beautiful body that actually helps us to walk and talk and, throw our arms around and everything. And so it's amazing how we have, there's things that were happening in our lives, and we just get so caught up in it that that's our normal now. And so to me, I love, like, the thought of the lotus flower. I actually have a tattoo on my back, and it's a lotus flower in the mud. And then I have my
yeah.
birth sign. I'm a Virgo, so I have the Virgo sun is shining down on the thing on the
Oh, I
lotus
love
flower,
that.
because it's like I felt at that time that I got it, I thought I was birthing a new me.
Yep.
And that was the symbol that I had for that. And so that I really loved that you were sharing that, because it is amazing when we can start seeing our present as a gift, and that we can see that we can let go of the old stuff and not have to carry that luggage around with us. There's a thing that I take some of my clients through. It's a visual where they not only do they meet their younger self and say, you've got this, everything will be okay, I promise you, I'm doing really good now, and I'm you in years. And then the other thing is, I actually have them in their imagination take a suitcase and just fill it with all the shit. Ugh, all
Yeah.
of it in their mind. And then they close that suitcase up and they put it outside of the door so that somebody can come pick it up and take it away, so they don't have to carry all that stuff around anymore. It's a visual thing that I do with a lot of my clients who
Oh, I
need
love
something like
that.
that. Yeah. So it's so amazing that how people feel, like, just like that. Like I said, we were talking a minute ago about that. But
Yes.
it's like you can
Uh,
almost see their complexion change, and they're just lighter. It's amazing. Yeah.
oh, I love that. I love that. It's such a beautiful thing when you can see that aha moment, or that, like, just all of that just processing through someone. It's magical.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing.
Thank
And I
you.
just want to ask you really quick, is there one thing that you would like to say, to leave everybody with? And just so everybody that's watching or listening will know, that I'm going to put in the description, I'll have all the information of how they can connect with you, from your Facebook to whatever it is that you need to share. It'll all be there, for everybody. But what is one thing that you would like to leave everybody with, if you haven't said it already,
Yeah.
or
Uh,
even if you have?
give do things that scare you, and just believe in yourself. Um, you do not have to have it all planned out. And sometimes when the universe is calling you to do something that's bigger than you, just trust in that process, whether it's leaving a relationship, whether it's doing something different. We're all so busy. Everyone's so busy. But when you find that time, whether it's volunteering, or whether it's trying something new, or whether it's starting something like the Women's Empowerment Series, and you're like, oh my God, what did I just do? Um, the impact is going to be so huge on your life and many others. So just know, and like you said before, the other little thing is just be kind. Be kind, and you never know what someone else is going through.
Yeah, beautifully said. I love that. Well, I will leave everybody with the quote that I always leave people with, and that is, The best way to predict the future is create it. So, what are you creating? And with that, I will say, this has been lovely. And thank you so much for being here. And remember to leave a comment and like, subscribe, and share.